Meteorologist Robert Spetta here with you today. It is the 15th of March, 2014. I'm joined in by meteorologist Mike Adcock, Cameron, the creator of Earth.NallSchool.net, weathercaster Clark out of Manila. All of us are going to be talking about what's going to be happening over the coming week and what happened this past week out here. I think the big topic right now, and what most people are probably going to be tuning into, is for Invest 94W. It's a low pressure area southeast of Guam, but also we got some weather occurring across northern Japan. I know right there in Mike's hometown, he's going to be impacted by the end of the weekend, and much of Japan's actually going to see a pretty decent warming trend. And then by next weekend, I think our live update's going to be a little bit longer. So thanks, guys, for joining here today. Who wants to start off? I think this is just going to be one of those throw-around coffee table type discussions, and we're just going to kind of go through. And why don't we just first get into our Invest 94W out here and where it is right now. And I'll go ahead and zoom in on the satellite picture so people watching at home can kind of see this area, which is getting some convection. Mike, you want to jump in with a little bit of analysis of what we have been seeing over the past couple of days?
Absolutely. What we've been tracking is this disturbance that's been moving across the Western Pacific, right now moving through Micronesia, bringing some heavy rain showers and some isolated thunderstorms to Pohnpei, Kosrae, some of those islands there in western Micronesia. This continues to move off to the west at about 10 knots. So right now, near term anyway, looking at those heavy showers and thunderstorms, and then later on in the week, or actually about this time next week, we'll start to see.
Yeah, and I mean, right now, do we have a low pressure? I haven't looked at the ASCAT imagery or anything like that. I'm thinking it might actually have that closed circulation on it. And once we get that, I think this is going to be a little bit more interesting as far as basically the analysis and forecast of the storm, because once we get that genesis phase in there, I always talk about the genesis phase. Clark, what's the kind of the talk? Is there any talk in the Philippines at this time? They're around Manila, and I know it's only a week out, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's not much of conversation going on at this time.
Check on the news channels recently. No noise at all regarding the system. Perhaps they're not really covering it as of yet. Not much on GMA, ABS-CBN. Not much.
Yeah, and I guess I can't really blame them too much for it. It is still a week out, and this is kind of our analysis looking away ahead. I think the biggest thing we have been seeing is the model outlook. And Cameron, I'm going to go ahead and pull up. You just pulled up the your sites, earth.nallschool.net, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on the screen here. And
yeah, I'm playing around with this right now. This is the forecast from GFS for the 16th of March. This is local time, 3 p.m. local time for Japan, but UTC 6 a.m. And you can see a little bit, I don't know if maybe it's a bit small, but a little bit of rotation starting in. And if we go day by day out, I only bring down about 5 days worth of forecast from the model. But you can see the system slowly moving westward and getting more organized. Does that come through very well? Can you see that?
yeah, we can see it pretty decently here. Right now it's over Yap and Palau. It's a little fuzzy, and I think that's because of the Google Hangout kind of turning it through. But that last frame, can you zoom right in on that one? And this is really...
So this is for the 19th.
I think this has...
Not sure
this
how
is
accurate, but...
Well, this is really what a lot of people are talking about with the GFS model. It's been aggressive, and right there it really displays. And this would be a typhoon if that GFS model followed through, and it has been aggressive.
Look, the wind speeds here, at least from this model, are 26 knots. So I mean, it's nice and circular, but not particularly, fast.
26 knots. All right.
Oops.
A few of them I actually just pulled up on my
Sorry.
screen here. This is the Wonder Map platform. And this is showing upwards about 45 to 50 knots. It's the same model run. So maybe this goes this probably goes a few hours after that 5-day outlook. So we're looking at about 5.5 days, and that's why we're
Yeah,
getting.
that's 6 p.m. So 6 p.m. GMT. This is 12 hours earlier. So, and what are those surface winds you're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other guys have any thoughts on this right now? And this is just a GFS model. Let's keep this discussion going. That's really the big thing. That's just the GFS model you're looking at, and we can go ahead and scroll through a few of the other model outlooks here. And I'm going to go and pull up the. That's Lucy down there towards the south. I'm going to go ahead and pull up what the latest run from the ECMWF is kind of showing near the end of their run, about 5 days out. And it's a little bit farther towards the south. And at least at this time, the GFS is going into southern Luzon. We have the ECMWF, which is pulling off there towards portions of Mindanao and southern Visayas. I think the latest run from the CMC, and this is really something that was jumping out at a lot of people, and I got the CMC up on the screen now, and you can see it there. Can you guys see it there in the bottom right? Just east. I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And we'll go ahead and zoom it in. And what we can see here is starting to come across. And the CMC, and yeah, it's the Canadian model. It's kind of the unwanted stepchild as far as tropical systems go, or tropical forecasting models go. It's not very pretty, but it is that's a pretty intense storm system, and it's picking up on a typhoon there along the eastern seaboard. So we got 3 models making landfall. The one that's the exception, and now let's just keep on this model analysis kind of analysis, is the NavGem. And the NavGem is pushing it, well, basically onshore, but it keeps it extremely weak. So we have 4 models out here. They're different intensities, but the latest runs all keep this on that westward track with the high pressure ridge kind of buffeting it towards the south. And Mike, you want to jump in? And what do you think at this time? What are your thoughts on those 4 runs based on climatology, based on where that high pressure ridge? Does it make sense? And would it be kind of a logical scenario to go off of what these models are saying right now?
Well, speaking from a climatological aspect, it's usually, this time of year, that intensity, this location, it does seem a little bit suspicious. That being said, we've looked at what, the last few tropical cyclones, be it tropical storm or tropical depression that's affected, or that has been in the Western Pacific, and with the exception of Faxai, they've all been in the Philippines area. So, a little unusual for climatology, but it makes sense this particular year. When you start to get all the model runs from time to time, as well as the different types, the GFS, the NavGem, the WRF, all the different various models, they're all starting to pick up on this. That tends to lead better probability that in fact something will develop. So it's one of those things I kind of step into it a little cautiously, because you're kind of going in something that's not normal, but you're gaining confidence anyway with the amount of model runs that are supporting it.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of the big thing. From a climate standpoint, at least at this time, I agree. And I was very cautious on this a week ago. I know we had a few people on the site who kept saying, hey, GFS is pulling something, and GFS is pretty good at picking something up, but how strong it's going to be, that's the big question, and they have been pulling at it. But now with these other models on board, it's getting a little bit more interesting. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I can actually, let's go ahead, and this is the big thing. I think that you can agree with, and I'll go ahead and show it here on the the ECMWF model is that the upper level winds, we always talk about wind shear. And as long as the storm system stays down here farther towards the south, it's going to avoid that wind shear. And well, this is actually looking ahead by Wednesday. Now, this is what a model run. This is not definitely going to be exactly what we're going to be seeing out here. And I'll even kind of lessen up the lower levels. And where you see these areas in the reds and the higher greens, this is where we're going to be looking at that higher chance of vertical wind shear as long as our storm system stays south of the high pressure ridge, which is just south of that jet stream. And I can even pull up the high pressure ridge here for you. This is going to stay on the westward track, and it will be avoiding the vertical wind shear. During a March storm system, it's usually you get these troughs, and right there's one dipping down just around the East China Sea. If that dips down further, that will encounter it, and I think that's what the NavGem expects, that to dip down much farther and kind of just completely shears it apart. Now, this is a week from today, so there's a lot of time for the dynamics to change, but that definitely is the big topic that we are seeing at this point.
Yeah.
Hey, while we're talking about this, Cameron, can you pull up the 500 HPA or millibars for 5 days from now?
You could bring that up.
Yeah.
It's like,
Hey, Clark, can you talk as well? I just want to make sure that I can hear you. Can't hear something Clark's saying.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. All right.
Hello?
I was getting some feedback on your end, so I turned off your mic, but just making sure that you're still with us. All right. So they're comparing up with the ECMWF. I just had it on the screen, and this is the GFS model, and it pulls it farther north, but you can see the same dynamics in play, that jet stream farther towards the north, and that high pressure ridge in place, and that's the big topic that we're going to be seeing out here. All right.
yeah.
So what do you guys think at this point? All right, so we got somebody else on here. If anybody has any comments, if you are watching this live, please let me know if you have any comments or questions that you want to toss at us. And definitely that's going to help push this along. I think next weekend is going to be a very interesting week, especially if this continues to track off there towards the west into this type of progression. I hope you guys can join in next week for that, if that does exactly occur as far as our storm system. So, sorry?
Yeah, I was just going to say, at this point, it's 5 days out or so, for the development of this system. Traditionally, in terms of what the models say, is that something to take, seriously, or is it still a wait and see, kind of situation?
Let's see. Mike, you want to take that?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it goes back to the confidence. You're starting to get the model runs that are showing the development, so the confidence that something will form is increasing. But yeah, I mean, there is a wait and see. There is a divergence in exactly where it's going to go. Is it going to go into the Visayas? Is it going to go more towards southern Luzon? So there is still a variance in terms of what's really under the threat and at exactly what time. We were talking about GFS, I believe, was showing about the 20th, 21st affecting land, but then you look at some of the other model runs, trying to think off the top of my head, I believe WARF was showing, wasn't until like the 22nd or 23rd, so you do have a variance at least in the days. So as we get closer, we're going to get a little bit more confidence in exactly when and where.
Yeah, and kind of jumping on that and your confidence, the point of that, Clark just pointed out to me, and Clark, please just jump in if you have something to say. I've seen you put it on the chat box on the side. The CMC model, the latest 0Z run, what I was just showing you was 12Z. I forgot to refresh it, but it actually has a recurving scenario. And this is what we're talking about. The model's jumping all over the place in the long range because this goes ahead by next week, and this would be best case scenario. It completely misses the Philippines, goes west to Guam, recurves, and pushes off there towards the north. What that passing upper level trough I was just talking about a second ago. So yeah, that's really what we're talking about right now. It's a week out, and there's still a lot of chat on it, and we still got a lot of stuff to go over it.
When is the traditional start of the tropical storms or tropical cyclone season for this area?
Well, I think the Western Pacific doesn't really have a start or end. It's kind of teeters off,
I
and
see.
then we see it pick back up again in typically May to June. But what we
Hmm.
are seeing, at least at this point, is a kind of, and I think this is a little bit more active than normal we have seen thus far. We've seen 3 named storm systems. This could be the 4th. I'm not sure as far as how odd that is by the month of March, but it is a little bit earlier. And typically it's not till May until June, and we see stuff pick back up. But you usually get at least one storm a month,
Right.
even in January and February, and extending out towards March as well.
And sorry, another question.
Yeah,
This
please,
is my
please do.
ignorance
This
of
is great. Good.
the whole thing, how this all works. But the names that are used for the storms, is there like a different set of names for the southern hemisphere? Is there is it split in two in terms of how those storms are tracked? Because there's a number of named storms, so far, around Australia, New Zealand. Um,
Mike, you want to
and
break that down?
that's not in the set of 4 named storms we've been talking about just now, near.
Abs- Absolutely. Actually, in each basin or portion of the of an ocean, they have a set of names. So, for instance, in the Pacific, just the Pacific as a whole, you have west of, or I should say, north of the equator, yet west of the international date line. They have a set of names. Between the date line and 140 degrees east, the Central Pacific has a set of names. East of 140 degrees to North America, they have a set of names. So yeah, and you're talking about the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, absolutely. There's actually numerous different sections that's been broken up that have a set of names. The South Pacific, portions in Australia, Fiji, they all have their own list of names that they pull from.
One thing that surprised me, just paying attention to weather more recently, at least globally, is how I don't know, like the whole area just seems to be continually spawning storms. I guess maybe in the southern hemisphere, I'm more used to, the hurricane seasons in North America, right, where things very clearly settle down over the winter, and then they pick back up again in the spring or actually late summer almost. But I guess there's always storms somewhere forming, right?
Absolutely, and a lot of that has to do with the difference or the difference in seasons. Whereas this is, we're getting into late winter, early spring in the northern hemisphere. This is, late fall approaching, or let me back that up, late summer approaching fall in the southern hemisphere. So this is prime time for the southern hemisphere to be dealing with storms.
I see.
That's why we've been seeing, there's a handful of storms that have developed in and around the Australia area, tracking Lucy out toward Vanuatu and then moving down toward New Zealand. Yeah, this
Right.
is the prime time for them.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually. I just had an image here, and I'm kicking it up on the UStream guys, so you won't be able to see it. But this was one of the model runs, and you're saying the southern hemisphere is quite uh, active at this time. And yeah, there was 3 storm systems being picked up on the models. Whereas and next week in the southern hemisphere, one off northwestern India, Australia, the other one off of the Coral Sea, and then furthermore, we're still dealing with Lucy. Actually, do you guys want to change up and let's talk about Lucy just for a few minutes? We can
Yeah.
go ahead and kind of just show what is happening down here towards the south. And I just pulled it up with the ECMWF model, and we'll just kind of scroll through because if you're in northern portions of New Zealand out here, just off the North Island, extending down towards the western seaboards. What we are going to be seeing over the next 24 to 40 hours is not just the winds, but the rainfall, which is going to be kicking up. And I'll go ahead and show the precipitation here as well, because there's going to be some pretty heavy showers, I think a few hundred millimeters. Then once the wind changes and comes in from the east by Sunday and the Monday, even Christchurch could see some pretty heavy rain. And we know that last week Christchurch saw some record-breaking flood, so we got rain falling on already saturated grounds. That increases the risk of yet more flooding out here in New Zealand. You typically, climatologically speaking, the western seaboards get impacted by wet weather, but on the eastern seaboards, you get too much. It definitely results in some sort of flooding out here. I haven't seen the latest. Now, Lucy, we keep on saying Lucy. She's no longer a cyclone. It's an extratropical cyclone. And Cameron, I guess as far as Weather 101, do you get the differences between cyclone and extratropical?
I just wanted to ask that question because, from is it just a matter of definition? As soon as the storm passes a particular latitude, then it just suddenly becomes this, extratropical storm and, in a sense, loses its name or whatever. Isn't that a rather arbitrary distinction to make, or is there something about the system that really changes, as it crosses a particular, or progresses more and more towards the poles?
Mike, I think you're really good at kind of putting those definitions out there, and I'll jump in at any time. But there is it's kind of like going from black to white, and there's a gray area where it changes. And Mike, why don't you jump in and kind of take that apart? I'm going to see if I can find some graphics that kind of display the difference. And yeah, go ahead.
I think you hit it right on the nail when you said going from black to white. That's exactly. It's not something that's usually arbitrarily. Once you cross a certain level of latitude, what you're looking at is a tropical storm or tropical cyclone or whatever nomenclature you want to give it is a warm core low. That is, it's cut off from any type of temperature advection or any changes of temperature. It's kind of cut off in its own beast. As it starts to progress, poleward, then it becomes extratropical, and what that means is now we're starting to transition from that warm core cut off low to a more a low that you would normally see progressing across, the north, that has temperature advection, that has frontal systems associated with it. So right now, that's what we were dealing with Lucy a couple days ago. It's starting to get far enough south that it's starting to be influenced by the westerly, starting to get that temperature advection and transition into a normal frontal low that you would expect, to see in New Zealand. The only challenge is it still has that tropical moisture or the remnant tropical moisture, so it makes it a very strong, very wet system.
Right, and so it really is the label is not just a label. It's really representative of how the structure of the system is changing.
Absolutely.
Actually, I just pulled up a graphic, and it's on the show live right now, and just Google image. Then basically on the left it shows that warm core low, the vertical structure, and on the right it shows that advection. And I think that's the big thing that happens with it. The low becomes a little bit less vertical, and it kind of turns in from a chimney to you blowing on a flame, kind of. And with our warm core lows, they definitely want that vertical structure. And once you start, and that's why they have the symmetrical shape, and it's kind of like a water draining, except backwards. And once we start getting a lot of vertical wind shear and the differences in temperatures, that whole vertical structure gets kind of construed and all over the place, and then that's when we start to see these warm fronts set up and the cold fronts set up, and that's what we're the extratropical. So just kind of running off of what Mike just said as well, and basically I think I just said the same thing. So Yeah, right now she's going extratropical, and I can pull back up that ECMWF model here, and what we can see is kind of the cold front. And actually, you know what? I'll just pull up, and this is kind of neat because I can just pull up the temperatures. Um, and we can see, oh, you can't see it. Oh, I was hoping you'd be able to see the temperatures. You can only see it over the land areas. All right. Well, typically you can see where the cold front and the warm fronts are, and the
Yeah.
whole veering of the winds. And actually, with this particular graphic, you can see that we have a warm front or a warm front setting up, or that's a cold front setting up down here towards the southern hemisphere, and then the warm off there towards the north. And this is becoming more and more of one of these extratropical type systems. Every time I look at a southern hemisphere system, especially with fronts, I get very confused. I'm sorry if you're watching from
Yes.
Australia. I'm terrible. Right now, I'm looking at this going, wow, that's one intense high pressure. Oh, I'm stupid.
Oh, just because of the rotation, right?
Yeah, the winds are backwards.
Yeah.
They're saying your winds are backwards, but you know exactly what I mean. All right, so let's see what else we got going on here. And I actually, on that token, let's completely switch gears and go off towards the north into Japan, where most of us are watching from Japan, except for you there, Clark, in the Philippines. And Clark, how warm is it there in Manila today?
Start now. It's practically the start of summer or the hot season in the Philippines. So temperatures are going up to 32 right now. Everybody's looking forward to summer vacation as we speak. As you know, in the Philippines, there's a difference between what summer is on the entire northern hemisphere. What we get here is when the rain stops, it's practically summer and it gets hot. During May, the temperatures in Manila could practically rise up to 38 degrees in noontime. And right now it's getting warmer. Anyway, the kids are still playing even if it's hot. So yeah,
All right, so you said low 30s. I have it on the screen actually right now, high 20s to low 30s. Lucky you. So myself, Cameron, and Mike were all here in Japan. All right, and Mike is the most fortunate and blessed one to be in northern portions of Honshu, where Mike, what was your forecasted high for today?
Oh, forecasted high would probably 3 or 4 Celsius.
Oh. Oh.
Actually, it just got up on the screen there as well, and yeah, it's absolutely bitterly cold. Um, and the big thing, and the reason why I'm asking these questions, because it's all relative. And what I think I'm seeing, and what we are going to be seeing over the next basically 24 to 48 hours out here, is a storm system coming through, and it's going to move across Japan. And this is looking by Sunday night. And you were even talking about thunder snow possibly, Mike, before we turned on this cast. And you're going to be seeing heavy snowfall across much of Hokkaido, northern Honshu, but a warming trend for Tokyo. And actually, by Monday into Tuesday, expecting highs in the mid 20s. Hooray! Um,
Wow. Definitely springtime.
and how that's comparison to what um, to what Clark was saying just a second ago with that he's into the high
Yeah.
30s. So yeah, right now I guess it's all relative and exactly what you are seeing out here, but we are going to be seeing a gradual warming trend just due to the sunnier skies coming in and those southwesterly winds continuing to pick up across much of Honshu out here. So that's the good news with that. Um, what do you think, Mike? What are you expecting here by Sunday for you off there towards the north?
We're definitely looking at some snow up here. For us, and again, just as you say with temperature, I mean, the same thing with snowfall. It's all relative. Um, you know, right now we're looking at about 10 centimeters, roughly, of snowfall. I mean, a lot of our snow is um, it's very micro scale. That meaning, what we get and what the next town over gets is significantly different. But that's really not a whole lot of snow for us. I think the interesting thing, and you mentioned that, was the possibility of some thunderstorms with this snow. That'll be interesting to see if it actually pans out. But nonetheless, we're starting to approach the end of snow season up here, so I am definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing out here is that I'm starting to get the feeling that spring is basically right around the corner. And you know what? I'll pull up on the screen. This is from a shot from myself. uh, this is from NH. Oh, okay. I forgot to put the audio on. Yeah, all right. This is a shot for myself at NHK World yesterday. And March 31st, we're actually expecting the cherry blossoms to set in. And then for you, it's not until April 20th when you get those blossoms. So unfortunately for you, it is going to take about a month later. But when they come in, that's the forecast, and I think that's what a lot of people are looking forward to. And I think we're gonna over the next week or two, I'm gonna show this graphic more and more and show people what exactly the whole forecast for those cherry blossoms are going to be. So anything else? I'm gonna put the field out to you guys or the table out to you guys. What do you want to talk about here?
Ooh, that's a good question. The cherry blossoms are a little later this year, aren't they?
Um, it's
Usual.
it's sort of later, and I say sort of later because we have been seeing a little chilly weather, and it's comparatively because last year we actually saw the blossoms coming about 2 weeks earlier than what they
Yeah.
typically do. So it was that last year was unusual. I think this is it's a little bit later, but it's not much. It's right around what it should be for about this time of year.
I see. I mean, overall, the winter here in Japan seemed it didn't it seemed pretty average actually in terms of well, maybe those big snowfalls were a little unexpected, but
Oh, this past winter? Yeah, that was actually Tokyo actually got a relatively higher than normal winter. Hey, just putting on the viewer questions here. We just got a question come through. Why is it possible? Why is the GFS model and back to the tropical system again? The GFS model has been picking up on in the extended range what looks like a little dip towards the southwest after it makes landfall over the Philippines.
mm,
And I guess at this time, it does kind of look like that. And really, I think the reason for that is because it gets kind of picked up and pulled towards the north around the that upper level trough that we were talking about earlier on. And we start to see the high pressure ridge come back in, and that kind of pushes it down towards the southwest. That is the only thing I could really think in at this time. And you can see the strong northwesterly winds up on the screen now, and that's indicative of that high pressure ridge coming in from the north, and that would push it down towards the south. Now that's that in that, and I keep on saying that's what would, but that's still over a week out, and there's still a lot of up in the air. But if a storm was to kind of start to make a southerly jog, that would be why it'd have to be getting pushed by some sort of outside force. And yeah, it'd be like kind of a mountain pushing a river or something like that. Yeah, I guess that would be about that.
these models are a lot of fun, you know. I mean, to compare and to look out far in advance, but
All
you
right.
know, it'd be so nice to have a real good idea of what level of confidence
Um,
the model had
to,
at a particular point. I don't ever see that number, published
uh,
with the.
I don't like using percentages, but less than 5 days, much more accurate. Pretty high confidence. There's no number, I guess. It just depends on the consensus. That's why we look at numerous computer models, not just one as well. For example, if you just one of those people that kind of say, "Look, the GFS model, it's slamming the Philippines right now," you're
Right.
probably going to have a very low confidence, or unless you are one of those people with a high, your accuracy is going to be low. I think that's the word I should use to describe on that. If now, I think it's pretty high confidence if you have five models 5 days out, which are like spot on, agreeing, then that means the dynamics are in place. So there's a few factors that go into it, and that's probably why you don't see the numbers too often. Hey,
I see.
on more of a newsy note, what were you just saying there a second ago, Mike?
With regards to,
Oh, the and now this is totally off topic and more of a newsy note. But yeah, you were just talking about the airliner.
oh, right, yeah. Right now the Malaysian Prime Minister is you know he's talking about that the plane was most likely hijacked and that they're reevaluating right now, ending the search in the South China Sea and reassessing the deployment of assets more toward the west, kind of taking this forward as more of a hijacking versus
Wow.
an incident.
That's coming from the prime minister, not somebody like on Twitter or
Correct.
Facebook or anything like that.
Correct. That was the Malaysian Prime Minister. He's speaking with the families in Beijing right now.
Wow, that is very scary and interesting. Um, we were just having a discussion here. If it was hijacked and went over the Indian Ocean, um, what? Now this is just me spitballing, and it's. I mean, you guys can jump in at any point. Clark, feel free as well. Um, if you're going to hijack a plane, you go over the ocean, and you turn off contact with land areas. You're probably going to get lost over the ocean, right? And
You would
I think
think,
people are
I mean,
hoping it landed, but
at the very least, you presumably want to land somewhere.
yeah, except if you turn off ground contact, if you turn on your own information, people are going to be able to find you, and that's why it's been so hard to find this person. They turned off their transponder and everything, so that's interesting, and that's just me spitballing. And I think I'm being very careful not to do that too much because we have been seeing that a lot over the past week. People just kind of, especially we're just talking about before we came on the 24-hour news cycles and how just
Yeah.
news now has got to be loving this because I'm sure people are getting their most views
Yeah.
ever in this past week because everybody's tuning in. And it's definitely the big story. It almost feels like an episode of Lost. It's real life TV, and media is going to feed off of that. So this is coming from somebody who works in the media, although I like to say I
Yeah.
work in weather, not media. So yeah,
I mean, it's really, it's I don't know how to say. Um, you always have to tread cautiously when you have an event like this, which is fascinating. It is mysterious, and we're drawn to it, right, because of the drama involved. On the other hand, these are real people, right, who are on that plane, and the same thing comes with discussion about weather phenomena, right? Because you might look at a storm and see how it, a cyclone, see how it develops. It develops into something extremely strong, right? And that's fascinating, but at the same time, incredibly dangerous.
yeah, and that's something
So
that
it's always I don't know how you walk that line and
well,
be conscious of the human cost, right?
this is one of the images that really bothered me. I'll throw it up on the screen share here so you guys can see it, and I'll pull it up on the Ustream so people at home can
Yeah.
see it. And this is one of the images that we saw last Saturday that really just kind of irked me. Is this right here? And
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
Googled, and okay, I get it. You just lost your family. These people are crying, but what kind of story do you intend on getting from this? Look at all the cameramen, the paparazzi around these people.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there is a line that has to be drawn at some point. You can get the photos you want. Look at these high-powered cameras. You have a little bit of a zoom on this. You can get the photos you want by backing up and letting these people be, and that really bothered me. These images and like you said with weather, and if you want to just change it back to weather really quick, it's the same situation. People that say stuff like, "Oh, look at this super typhoon! It's gonna be awesome,"
Yeah.
but this is coming from, let's say, Americans, and it's a typhoon hitting the Philippines.
Yeah.
there always is a human factor, and I think that is that any time of you're talking about media or anything big story, you always have to take that human factor into play.
Yeah.
How often do you get that down there, Clark?
Uh, Probably when they want to make it a little bit more sensational. There's some news outlets here that are kind of inclined that way, but it's my opinion.
Sorry, I
Uh,
had to laugh when you started talking, Clark. It's like you have a crazy house there right now. Minute I turned on Clark's mic, it was just insane in the background. It's funny. It's all
it
right
is
though.
crazy.
Yeah, I do notice that, and that's one actually thing I get annoyed about weather, and I have noticed in the Philippines. I've also noted it in the States as well. It's sometimes when there's big news stories, and you guys can back me up on this, is that the background music. I get so annoyed about background music. Like if we were talking right now, and let's say man, I wish I had some soundtracks loaded up on the producer here.
Right.
Like let's say we're talking. Okay, look at Invest 94W, and in the background it's like dun 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 dun.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That drives me absolutely insane. Uh, yeah, like if NHK seriously came up to me one day and was like, "Hey, Robert, we're talking about this earthquake, tsunami about to hit Japan, but we're gonna play the Ride of the Valkyrie in the background." You know, dun dun
Right.
dun dun dun. I'd be like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
Well,
and
at some point, the production of that of the coverage is becoming not informational but entertainment.
yeah. Well, I think that goes back to the airliner. At some point, it becomes less informational because I mean, let's be honest. What is that airline to me? You know, and I say that with the most sincere um, condolences to the families. But as far as me, how does it impact me? It really doesn't. But it is definitely information. It's very interesting, and at some point, especially with 24-hour news cycles, it becomes more of a yeah, almost a show, and that's why I'm talking about the paparazzi getting up in these people's faces. That's kind of
Yeah.
taking that show a little bit too far. And with weather, the background music, I think that's yeah. And I guess it goes back. Yeah, sometimes I have seen it down south. Is that it is consent. The U.S. is the worst at it though, and this is coming from an American. The U.S. is worse at sensationalizing. I mean, come on, let's put a name on everything, and call it, you know,
Right.
snowpocalypse or snowtober or I mean, superstorm Sandy. What? Tell me what the definition of superstorm Sandy is.
Right.
I think I have a term for that. Tabloidal. Looks like reading off a tabloid, something like that.
Sorry.
Uh, as if you're reading the news right now, especially here, it's like you're reading off a tabloid. Period.
Right.
Uh,
The idea
Especially with the headlines.
the idea is to how can this event be spun in a way that sells the most papers or gets the most hits, right? Forget actually disseminating any actual information that might be objective, but
Hmm. I just lost Mike
how
here
do
a second ago. All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and actually, Clark has raised a valid point, and that we do have somebody that, you guys could say it out here as long as you don't use the person's name. We do have somebody that does that in the Western Pacific and Eastern Asia. Is very, how do you say? He likes to spin up news, and when you like, for example, and this could be
mhm.
anybody. Our Invest 94W, we have been referring this to Invest 94W, and it's being called by this specific person, and they have a very popular Facebook page that has like 60,000 likes on it or something like that. I'm not sure. Um,
That's great.
they've been calling it pre-colloy, as in it already is named, or it definitely will be
Um,
named. This could completely fall apart, though. the classic example, this same person put out something called Super Typhoon Yolanda Part 2, which was, and it was, they were talking about the first storm of the season that only became a tropical depression, barely a tropical storm, but they put this out about 2 weeks in advance. I think Aring, and it was just completely, it was shared like a million times. TV stations had to pick up on it and say, dude, this guy's full of BS. Because one particular model, and we were just looking at models and we were talking about the confidence a second ago and about how those models, if one says something strong but the rest say something weak, it's very low confidence. He used one particular GFS model run that said, yes, there was probably going to be a typhoon to hit the Philippines, and
Right.
and put out this graphic based on that. And oh my goodness, the internet, social media exploded because it was a pretty, and props up to him, it was a good looking graphic. It
Right.
looked pretty, capital letters. It was catchy. And yeah, I think that's sometimes you get that over sensationalism that sometimes it's just to get more viewerships, and I think he got like 10,000 likes in a week. In the States, they have
Wow.
another site that is very similar to that, and that one put out a graphic like 2 weeks ago that, oh my goodness, they put out something like every like 9 million people on the eastern seaboard of the US are going to see some sort of rough weather next week.
I see.
It was like, but it was like in big red letters and everything, and people were like, "Oh my god!"
Well, again, it comes back to that.
Other than that, Robert,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
it actually made it to mainstream media here. That that post that he did about Yolanda Part 2, it really did make a big fuss out of it. People got really scared, especially those living in the Yolanda-stricken areas. They don't want another one, of course. It really spread out. Panic maybe ensued in some areas. I wouldn't, I'm not sure about that, but the effects, it really did make an effect. That really
Right.
pissed all of us off.
Actually, and I'm just gonna pull up the graphic that I made on this particular storm system, and it's not up on the screen, guys. I'm sorry. It's actually up on the Ustream here, and you know which one I'm talking about. I just made it the 5 day plus track.
Mhm.
And I really want to know your feedback because sometimes I feel like I might be going too far with this because I put it out to March 19th, and then I say beyond that, models are very low confidence. And the one thing I do put, if I do put a possible, I say possible storm, possible colloid, I never say pre, and a huge cone of air and explain why there is a huge cone of air. And sometimes I kind of feel a little bit too aggressive by putting out these long range before the official agencies do. I do apologize for that, but I think it's kind of good that we can use this information and put out and say a first warn, but also give people that information that this is very low confidence and that it can change, and not just say it can change, but just explain why there is the differences and changes. Because one thing I have also noticed, and I guess furthermore on that same topic of the Yolanda situation, is that with anybody weather forecasting, is that you can over sensationalize anything. I can go outside and say, you know what? I think a thunderstorm's going to hit here tomorrow, and oh my goodness, it is going to be the worst storm of the century. And then tomorrow, nothing shows up. It's a sunny day, and just be like, oh, well, it's weather and it changes. And, that's weather. Oh, weather, it changes. And I think I've seen that in a few situations like that.
Yeah.
All right. So, I think Mike's not going to come back in. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Let's go for it. This is actually a pretty good chat. We're starting getting a little bit more coffee table, kind of just throwing it around the table here, the table talk. That's what I kind of want to call this instead of and anytime you have something to say, just go ahead and toss it in here. It doesn't have to be anything too formal. I think at this point we've been talking for 15 minutes now. If you are still watching on the Ustream, or if you're watching the after recording 15 minutes in, thank you.
Yes. Exactly.
Actually, I'll put it as anyone want. I think we got like according to the Ustream, there are a few people who's watching right now. Who is watching? I'll put a comment in the box. Um, yeah,
I've exhausted my set of topics I had. So
somebody is still here, and they're saying the other guy. I think he is a she. Don't forget to put about the storm surge graphic. Oh yeah, all right. I guess yeah. There's a few things to go with that, but yeah, I think I have exhausted as well. We've been talking for an hour. Yeah, I think that was a pretty productive little episode of the Westpac Weather 101 live chat or whatever. I haven't made a name on this yet. Oh my goodness, what did I just do on the 3 panel? It's like 3 panels of me and 2 satellite pictures. Where did you guys go? There we are. All right, so you can play this back if you are watching this, or I think a lot of people are just going to watch the YouTube video and they can just scroll through whatever point they want. I like this, and I like doing this weekly with you guys. It's always fun, tons of fun. Nah, and I
Awesome.
think making it less formal is definitely the big thing. Just kind of chatting about what is happening out here for these chats. I know next weekend, and Cameron Clark, let me know if you want to join in on this. Next weekend, I'm probably going to do just a live episode if this storm does develop into something pretty
Great.
intense. Friday night. Friday's a holiday here, by the way, Cameron. I don't know if you get the day
Oh, it
off.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being unemployed at the moment,
Oh, you,
every day is a holiday for me.
you get to make really cool freaking websites. So whatever. That's your job. I seriously think if you charged for that, you'd probably be raking in the dough. So,
Maybe, maybe not.
um, and I think yeah, Friday night I want to do a live update if this does kind of develop into what may be happening with it. And I'll just zoom in on the satellite picture here. Clark just pulled up. Just right now, I mean it's pretty interesting, and okay, I can't. Well, let me zoom in. It's pretty interesting, and the convection is there. It's moving over some of the islands here in Micronesia, and it is going to bring some showers out there. But over the course of the next week, we could see what's going to be happening with this. So, yeah, guys, let me know if you want to join in next. I think Friday night. And the cool thing about this Ustream is that I can stay live as long as I want, because really all I can do is just put on some music in the background and loop through some old videos or something, or just loop through a satellite picture, and all it does is pick up on the music. So it's kind of interesting how it works. And I've been thinking
Great.
about somehow running if we are looking at a landfalling system, is to run a whole like live broadcast for 12 hours, of course taking breaks, etc. And
Yes.
yeah, and then you could still have something up on the screen, and then every time something new comes in, new information, we could toss back up that new information on the screen and just jump back in with the Google Hangouts, or you guys can leave whenever you want, come in, and it would work like kind of like that.
Okay.
What do you think, Clark?
That sounds good with me. If we get something breaking out of the system, then we better show up again.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I guess on that token, that is all for now. Thanks for joining in, guys. Thanks for watching. If you are still watching, if you watched all the way through in the YouTube video. And yeah, all right, guys. I'm going to shut this down now.
Thank you.